Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel Ruby, and I'm so glad that you have joined me for this episode. This episode is going to be about healing from divorce with voice biofeedback. Now, you may have heard of biofeedback. I know I had until I met my guest, but I never knew about voice biofeedback. And as I've learned in the last few days more about it, I have been fascinated. So my guest today is Deepak Chari, and he is an engineer and certified biofeedback specialist with advanced voice biofeedback. He helps women and men release hidden emotional blocks from stress, anxiety, and past emotional experiences with an advanced voice biofeedback technology so that they can feel calm, confident, and empowered, attract the relationships they desire, enhance their current relationships, and improve their business success. Deepak is the co-founder of the Chari Center of Health, an engineer and certified biofeedback specialist, and the creator of his Life Transformation Technology Program with advanced voice biofeedback to promote emotional healing, mental clarity, and peak performance. I'm so happy to have you here today, Deepak. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on your show, Rachel.
Yeah, this is fun and exciting and something new, like I said, for me. So I'm excited to share this with the listeners and viewers. First of all, why don't you tell us what is voice biofeedback, the $1 million question for today, and how does the technology actually work?
Absolutely. The whole central theme of this work that I do is the next advancement of what biofeedback was. It's actually the next generation of it, because everyone might have heard of biofeedback from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even 2000s. But this is the next quantum generation of it. It's actually called biocommunication, which means two-way communication. But it's based on the sound of your voice, because I have found, based on my research, but based on what I was also introduced to, that your voice is the most powerful representation of how you see the world, perceive the world, react to the world, respond to the world, and what you bring into your life. It has basically represents all your thoughts, feelings, and emotions in the carrier wave of your voice. So since it's so accurate to express that, that's what I use for when I listen to people's voices to find out what's going on in their life. Things that they're aware of and things they're not aware of. So that's the modality of my analysis, is the voice.
That's fascinating. How did you get into all this as an engineer? How did you discover this?
It started, Rachel, with my own very challenging emotional journey when I was growing up as a kid. You see, what happened as a kid, I perceived I was being bullied by kids older than me, slightly older than me. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And I was a bookworm also. So I had no confidence, self-esteem, or self-worth whatsoever. So my hiding place or safe place was the library. So I would hide in the library for long periods at a time and going between aisles, where it was safe. And when I would find a safe aisle, I would kind of hang out there. And since I was there for so long, I said, well, I may as well occupy my time. So I would grab seemingly random books from the shelf. But I later found out those books were on the law of attraction. Think and Grow Rich, As a Man Thinketh, How to Win Friends, Influence People, Law of Attraction books by Dr. Joseph Murphy, and many, many other beautiful books, which started helping to improve my own confidence in myself to face my challenging world. But this pattern of being bullied or being also kicked out of every group there was possible, so I was on my own, happened throughout my entire elementary school, junior high, and high school. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated from high school, I thought, okay, now this will stop, this bullying pattern, right? But guess what? It shifted to something else, because I drew the most horrible friends and classmates and bosses, supervisors, and even relationships. All of them were cruel, manipulative, mean, condescending, gaslighting, every negative thing you could think of in the book And these are all supposedly my friends and relationships. So I kind of thought, well, this pattern seems to be continuing. Is this something I'm going to have my whole life? Well, I guess it's better to have these kind of people as friends versus nobody. And that was my thinking at the time.
Right.
But then going back to my childhood also, and this builds the case here, I used to take care of my dad by giving him all these pharmaceutical pills for his high blood pressure and other medical conditions. What I didn't realize is the reason he even had that is because he was so stressed out from himself being bullied by his own bosses, but he was too scared to say anything to them. So he kept it all inside and didn't tell his family, didn't want to burden the family. So suddenly at the age of 51, he died of a massive heart attack. So my mom was a young widow with 2 teenage kids. So then my sister, it was just my sister and I, we looked at each other and we said, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And can we prevent this from happening to anyone else in the future? So fast forward, once when I decided to become an engineer, because in tribute to my father, who was an engineer, my sister had a strong desire to pursue medicine, but not the conventional medicine. Study conventional medicine, but then learn natural functional medicine to find a natural solution, because the other way didn't work for my father. So she started doing that. Then fast forward to 1999, when we moved to San Diego, my sister and I formed the Chari Center of Health. Chari's our last name, in tribute to our father, who passed at a young age, to prevent this from happening to anyone else. So I was working in the field as an engineer, but I saw all the hundreds of people she healed in a natural way using this natural functional medicine processes in our own center. So you know what? I kind of thought, I'm doing this left brain engineering work, improving productivity and efficiency. I would like to heal people too. But my sister said, that's great, but you don't have a medical degree. I said, you're right. So this goes back to my childhood when I was reading the books on the law of attraction, remember? So I suddenly thought, wait a minute. I was reading about putting your intention out and manifesting things. Could I manifest working at our center? So I put my intention out that, universe, please help me with my talent in engineering to somehow heal people in some way. And that's all I said. I have no medical degree. So then within 2 weeks later, some friends came up to me and said, Deepak, this guy's going to be speaking in Santa Monica, California, about how your voice reveals everything in your whole system, in your subconscious mind. Anything limiting, negative thoughts, negative emotions, even repressed thoughts. But most importantly, how you could send frequencies, this can be done remotely, to that person to release those limiting patterns of thinking quickly and easily, no matter how long they've had them. So I got so excited. I went up to the presenter and said, I would like to apprentice with you, because a light bulb went on in my head that this is something I could do at our center. Now I can join. And he said, okay, I'm going to just take one more person to apprentice. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time. So I learned the skill, mastered it. And then because of the engineering degree, this is how that fits in. I said, I wonder if I could streamline some of the steps he taught. Maybe shorten some things, maybe do different frequencies at different times. And I found I was able to streamline it and get even faster results. This is what I called my life transformation technology program, because I was seeing how it transformed so many lives. So before I worked at our own center, I said, can I transform my own life? Can I release this bullying pattern that I've had my whole life? Like the movie The Matrix with Morpheus and Neo? Is this really a program? So I worked on myself which are called, using what are called computerized voice maps, by analyzing my own voice, found the bullying pattern, released it. There's a feeling of relief you have when you release it, and it shows on the voice map as well. So once that was done, a couple of weeks went by, and suddenly all those horrible, nasty people I had around me my whole life, they said, we don't want to be around you anymore, Deepak. Yeah, you don't fit in with us. They started leaving. Everyone started leaving. I go, oh my God. I thought it's better to have these horrible, narcissistic, mean people in my life than to have nobody. But when they left, within 2 weeks later, I drew the most wonderful, loving, compassionate, nurturing, positive people in my life. And guess what, Rachel? I had no concept of what that even was.
Yeah.
And why I share that with your viewers and listeners is, even if you've had challenging relationships in your whole life, in challenging situations that were negative, and you're like, I don't know any different. I'm all alive. My life could be any different. Or I don't even know what a loving relationship is. Well, I didn't know what it is either. I drew it into my own life, so the same can be for them as well. You can experience that because I did. So from that point, I started working on one person after another at our center till I worked on people all over the US and world. But it started with my own challenging emotional journey.
As those journeys often do. And I think that's beautiful. I too was bullied in middle school and high school by mean girls. And it had a huge impact on me. And I know what you experienced because there was a point where I almost dropped out of high school, and I was an academic. I knew I wanted to go to law school. I was very driven. I was very focused, but that was a horrible thing. And as I later in life became a parent, I really, I ended up helping both my kids went through bullying. So I ended up helping, and I used my voice to stand up and just really fight the school district and got rid of a principal and things like that. So things that happen, things such as the bullying or so many other ways that people might treat you, right, can really lay the foundation for later. So let's kind of get into that. You told me that there are 4 phases we all go through from birth that establish our emotional patterns later in life. What are these 4 phases?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are 4 phases that we all go through. No one escapes these. But that influences what happens on later in life also. In other words, remember I was bullied as a kid. Later on, after I cleared it, I go, gosh, where did that even come from? Well, it's the science of this work. The first phase is when your parents decide to procreate you. They want to create a child. Well, what happens is in the moment I'm being very direct here, I know, they decide to procreate you. Whatever thoughts, feelings, and emotions, negative beliefs, or even things from the past up to that point, a certain percentage of those emotions get downloaded into this new energy of this new being created. You see, this new being is pretty much clear of anything from any other influence, but a certain percentage of the unresolved issues of the mom and dad get downloaded to the kid. Maybe the mom wasn't ready to have a kid, or maybe she wasn't so happy in the relationship with your dad at that time, or in her life, or maybe they have trauma in their childhood. That's all that gets downloaded into the energy field of the child. But so does the unresolved emotions and thought patterns and belief systems of the grandparents on both the mother's and father's side. And if the person is adopted, then it would be from the biological parents' side, even if you never saw the biological parents. So once that happens, that's phase 1. But phase 2 is then you're in your mom's womb for 9 months incubating, but also incubating every thought, feeling, and emotion your mom is having. So if your mom was like, I'm not ready to have a kid right now, or I wanted to do other things, or I'm not so happy in the relationship with this man, the kid will pick that up. And what if they're both fighting and yelling at each other? Well, the kid's right in the middle, like, hey, I can hear you guys, picking up all the energy of that. So that already goes into phase 2. Then comes phase 3. Phase 3 is when you're born. You already had 2 phases done. Now you have the direct interface of the parents telling the kid different things. From age 0 to 7, I found is the most impactful, up to age 12. But especially 0 to 7. Because 0 to 7, the kid is like in the most deepest meditative state. They're like a sponge. Whatever is said, whatever is done, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, with the kid, is accepted, even if it's horrible. It's not questioned at all. Okay? So it's not analyzed. Only as an adult, we say, well, that was wrong. But as a kid, you don't question it. Up to age 12. So that already is phase 3. And even people older than us, teachers, uncles, aunts, what they tell us. For example, if the parents or other people said, gosh, you're a little slow. You're not as fast as everyone. Why couldn't you be more beautiful like that, or act like that girl across the street? Look how talented she is. Look how smart she is. Look how she speaks. Why can't you be like that? What's the message? I'm not good enough as who I am, so I have to be like somebody else. Or maybe I'm not lovable because the parents didn't know how to show love to the kid. All that gets downloaded into the mix. And what if the parents are fighting too, right? Now you have the direct interface of that as well. So then comes the next phase, which is phase 4. Phase 4 is when you take phase 1, which I talked about, phase 2 also, and phase 3 when you're born, and you duplicate the patterns and reactions of your parents and grandparents and of your whole ancestry into your own life. In other words, you'll make the same kind of decisions and actions that they did unbeknownst to you into your own life and then later into your kids' lives. And then your kids do the same thing. This pattern repeats these 4 phases. That's the reason when I created the system, the Life Transformation Technology Program, it's like a rocket ship blasting you out of this never-ending repeating pattern into a whole new realm where you're creating whole new experiences, not repeating the patterns of the past.
Wow. Okay. So I definitely want to get more into the patterns because I've done a podcast on patterns, and I think that's just so interesting. But first, let's talk a little bit about divorce and using your technology to help people. You say that you helped a lot of clients, and especially women, through divorce and other kinds of trauma. But focusing on divorce, what do you typically see in these people when you are analyzing their voices?
Generally speaking, I noticed a lot of anger, frustration, sadness, regret, guilt, shame. Like, how could I make this? How did I get in this situation? And I know I'm a smarter woman than that. I should have known better. Those are the most common emotions I generally pick up.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you see all that. You hear all that.
Yeah. And it's also in layers, because even as I'm clearing these different emotions, for example, if I found anger, like, I can't believe I got in this relationship and he wronged me and, all these kind of things, which is understandable and they're right. Mm-hmm. Once I cleared that anger, then underneath that, a lot of times is deep sadness, deep regret and sadness. And then underneath that can be guilt and shame and other things. It varies from person to person to a certain extent, but it always goes in layers because that's how the subconscious processes things.
Right. I agree with that. I think just having gone through my own healing journey, you work on one thing, maybe you work on that anger and you can be okay with that after a while and forgive and whatever you need to do. But then you might start feeling like you made a mistake. Everybody's different and there are so many layers. But okay, let's focus a little bit back on what your job is. You say that in the notes of someone's voice, you can hear suppressed emotions that go back to earlier in their lives, which you've already talked about. How might divorce contribute to or even accelerate those earlier suppressed emotions or even repressed emotions? And you can talk about the distinction between those two.
Yes, because of those 4 phases I discussed, this is what I found. Anything that's suppressed or repressed from the past, that is those childhood ages, 0 to 7, all the way from all those 4 phases I talked about, will eventually pop up if they're not addressed. In other words, and it's always the case I've found, no exception, from 0 to 7, everyone has had 0 to 12, some childhood issues or traumas or emotional upsets. Like I was bullied, but somebody else might have had, and a lot of the women I worked on, mental, emotional, physical abuse, unfortunately. So, and they never even told the soul. I mean, even to this day, I might have been the only one they told of, one other person. So whatever is held from the past carries a tremendous energy, in this case, a limiting energy. And if you don't do anything about it from that time, childhood time, many of the kids were told, you better not say anything or something will happen to you. This is what I also found when I worked on these women in childhood. They were told that. So then that creates a situation, because that unresolved energy projects energy into the future and thus draws, like a law of attraction, those books I read when I was in the library, situations and events to them that are about that same repressed energy. And then it's like it builds on that unresolved emotion of upset or frustration. And then that again draws even bigger things to you because those other two weren't addressed before. Think of a snowball going down a huge mountain. By the time it gets near the bottom, it has a lot of momentum and speed. That's kind of what happens. Mm-hmm. And then when that accumulates, then suddenly, boom, something just occurs out of the blue that I can't believe, Deepak, this happened. I didn't get any sign that this would happen, that I would attract this person or get in this horrible relationship. where did this come from? Well, it came from the cumulative suppressed, repressed emotions from the childhood that just were never addressed, were kept secret, and then it finally came up in an event that, or more than one event that, over and over again.
Right. And just to clarify in case people don't know, so when you suppress something, it means that you are kind of sweeping it under the rug, so to speak. So something bad might happen, like the woman you said didn't tell anyone that she was abused, and she just kind of thinks, I won't talk about this, and eventually it'll go away, which of course we know isn't the case. And then repressed emotions are those that you may have experienced in the same way, but completely don't remember. Like they're still in there, but you don't remember. And this can happen a lot with sexual abuse victims. So it's interesting that you can tap into both the suppressed and repressed emotions of somebody who's experiencing all these feelings when going through divorce, and know that and see or hear that so much of that comes from what happened in the past. I mean, it's all tied in together, and that's why it's so important that we deal with the feelings that we have and not put them on the shelf, or because they will affect things later in life, right? So but we're not taught that when we're children. Most of us aren't told, I guess some of us are told, like, get your feelings out and express yourself. But especially for men, I know, and you being a man know that when you're growing up, at least now it's kind of changing a little bit, but men are often told, don't be a sissy, don't be a girl, don't show your feelings, So those kinds of things can lead to the suppression or repression also. Okay.
Exactly. And also I'll just add, be perceived as a sign of weakness also.
Yes.
To share that. I just want to add that in there.
Yes, exactly. Okay. When someone releases the patterns that you discover in voice biofeedback, what type of changes do they typically notice? And how do you see the voice being different from before and after?
So in other words, I'll explain this a little bit to your audience. Imagine we have 60 trillion cells in our body. Imagine every cell has a 12-key keyboard in it. That's what I'm listening for. But the science of this work is that different emotions squash different keys of that 12-key keyboard. So let's say anger squashes different notes of that 12-key keyboard. Grief squashes totally different notes. Fear squashes different notes. If we have more than one of those emotions, and many people do, a lot of those notes are squelched out or not heard or squashed down. What that means is I don't hear all the notes in their voice. And for the average person listening to that person, if they had those suppressed and even repressed emotions, if those notes are not heard, that means we are not heard and we are not seen. Because the most common item that I hear from women or complain is that, Deepak, I'm not seen, heard, understood, appreciated, validated, acknowledged. That's the most common thing they say. And the reason is because a lot of them were told when they were kids, children are to be seen, not heard, or, keep it to yourself, or your emotions are not important, or whatever it was that they internalized. So they just keep it inside. But then what happens is those emotions, I'm scared, I shouldn't say anything, or, I better keep it all suppressed. Then you're not heard. Because I worked with women who worked with other people and executives. They had brilliant ideas, like this one woman. And the men didn't listen to her at all. And they lost money. She had ideas of how they could really double their money. They didn't listen to her. They lost money. Then she came to me frustrated. Deepak, I told them these men what to do, and they didn't listen to me. Why? I said, well, I can barely hear the notes in your voice because you have a lot of suppressed emotions from different traumas and things from the past. So let me go ahead and clear it for you. I cleared those limiting emotions, and then the notes were heard in her voice. And then I said, I want you to talk to those men again. You're a brilliant woman. You'll have some more creative ideas for them. So she went up to them and said, okay, you guys, I told you what to do, and you did not listen to a word I said, but I have an idea how you can get out of this hole and maybe even above it. This is what you can do. Oh my God, that's the most ingenious, brilliant idea. I've never heard of it. Absolutely ingenious. My gosh, I wish you told us the idea before we did that other one, we wouldn't have lost all that money. So she looked up to the ceiling, but kind of smiled because she knew the reason of why she wasn't heard before. But now she's always heard. That's the power of our voice when we release these emotions.
That's very powerful. So, okay, so that's interesting when somebody's notes pertaining to a specific emotion get squashed, as you say. How do you get that back? What is, I mean, I know without giving away what you do, but is it kind of like, obviously it's different for each person depending on which notes are squashed also, but if you're, for example, if you're going through a divorce and you're trying to heal, and let's say you feel a lot of shame because there's a lot of societal stigma still, unfortunately, about divorce. It's getting better, but comes from culture, religion, family, right? So let's say you're going through divorce and you have this, wow, I shouldn't have done this. This was so bad. I shouldn't have gotten divorced. I grew up, I knew divorce or marriage was forever. And so they're feeling a lot of guilt. So those notes are squashed. I guess what I'm asking is, do you work with them through like a series of, is it like a therapy or mantra kind of thing? How do you unsquash those emotions?
Great question. Yeah, there's no mantras of any sort. So what I do is, I call it a process called reverse engineering. So what I do is I actually will get those notes to play. It's a process called sympathetic resonance. So, for example, let's say we have two pianos next to each other, piano A and piano B. The old-fashioned pianos, not the synthesizer ones. So I hit the note A on piano A. I hit the note A on piano A. Piano B, that same note, I will hear it resonating, even though I didn't touch that piano. How's that possible? Because the string that was resonating, that note A on piano A, resonated that same note on the second piano. Like energies resonate like energies. So on the same principle, let's say someone was depressed or guilt and shameful about their life for 20 years or something. Those keys are stuck because of that particular emotion, as I was sharing before. So rather than go into the complexity of what all the different emotions are involved, I will find out in the keys that were stuck, resonate those specific notes to play. That's what I call reverse engineering. And whatever was sitting on those keys, whatever emotions were sitting on those keys, cannot otherwise stay in a harmonized environment. So in other words, when the key starts playing, that emotion will just lift right off, and the person will feel that limiting emotion, guilt, shame, regret, like you said, releasing out of their body in stages. So if it was a scale of 1 to 10, it was like, I'm so ashamed of what I did. I feel so horrible. There's a level 10. We do a round, and each round is a couple of minutes at a time where I deliver these frequencies. They close their eyes, they listen to this music with headphones, they place their hand on technology to receive the frequencies into every cell of their being. They think of the challenging situation of feeling ashamed about themselves. That level 10 energy will drop down. I'll say, how do you feel about that now after a couple of minutes? Oh, maybe it's like a 7. So we keep continuing in each session, which is an hour, and it'll eventually drop down to a very low level, eventually almost a 1 or 0. And even if it doesn't happen in that session, it might drop to a low number, and maybe the next session will drop to 0. But remember, this is something they had their whole life, 20 years or whatever. So we reverse engineer it. And rather than figure out the complexity, well, it's probably guilt, it's probably this, it's probably that. We don't even have to do that. We just go right to the reversing of the sound, reverse engineering it.
Sound healing is so powerful. I just did an episode on sound healing with someone who is very notorious for that as well. So I love the idea of using the frequencies but this is obviously very specific and so fascinating to me. What advice would you give someone coming out of divorce who feels afraid to make changes so that they can heal? Because obviously we can't heal unless we are willing to do something different, right? So what advice would you give?
I would say it's understandable that you're afraid to make a change and do something different. And the reason we are all afraid to do something different is, I'll tell you why. It's our own subconscious. You see, our subconscious wants to keep us in a box. It wants to keep us safe. But I didn't realize till I started doing this work. Did you know that in the process of keeping us safe, it might have us go through a lot of challenging situations, even emotional upsets and even terrible situations, but it's thinking it's keeping us in a box and keeping us safe. So if we're in fear, for example, it'll keep us in this box of fear. And it'll almost seem comfortable or even sometimes addictive to stay in that. So what I do in this process is I'll talk to the client and say, look, I understand how you feel. It's okay. But guess what? There's a better life than what you have. I guarantee it. But we just have to do it step by step. So I will expand the subconscious limiting beliefs to a wider level. So then they'll start feeling like, yeah, okay, I'm willing to take that first step. And it'll just keep opening them up, this whole process that I do, even if they're scared. So it's understandable they're scared because the subconscious wants to keep you in that scared place or angry place or whatever it is. But once you kind of release that and say, look, I understand what you're feeling, but it's okay. You can have a better life than this. Yes, you really can. Then they start going, okay, I trust you. And we take it one step at a time.
Right. It's always a good way to take it because these feelings can be overwhelming. What can you share a story about maybe a divorced woman who's gone through your program and found empowerment and healing through your voice biofeedback?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I worked on a woman who had, as she told me, drew a very neurotic person into her life. In fact, so she had to go, she went through this very bitter divorce, and she even had to have a restraining order for this person. And so she was very bitter and upset. And she was also, like you said earlier, very shameful. And like, how could I get someone like this in my life? I mean, I thought I'm a very caring, compassionate person. So I told her, has nothing to do with who you are. It was what was in your past that you never did resolve from your childhood. So that's what drew this person into your life. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person. You're a wonderful person. So I worked on clearing these patterns from her childhood, which created that situation. First, I cleared the upset of the situation of that divorce itself, of course, to take the emotional charge out of it, the anger, the frustration, the guilt, the remorse, the regret, the sadness. Once I've done that, then I go to the root of where it came from, which is her childhood, because she had a very dysfunctional, as she said, not me, upbringing, and very challenging, mentally, emotionally, every way. So once I cleared that, then I said, you may notice some interesting things happening in your relationships, but I just want to let you know that. So as I started clearing this, suddenly she was looking then for new men to date. Suddenly these new men started appearing, and she said, Deepak, these guys that suddenly came out of nowhere are absolutely wonderful. Nothing like this horrible husband I had before. I said, great. Have a good time, date, go out, dance, do whatever, but just hang with me. That was just the first stop. We have more to go. So I kept working on her. And then the following couple of weeks, Deepak, these men are, I can't believe it, even better than those previous men. Oh my gosh, I think I got to go for this. I said, hang with me. And we kept going like this every week till finally she came to a place of, okay, Deepak, I think this guy's my soulmate. And I looked at his energy. I go, yeah, I think you're right. And they've been together since that time. This was, I think, about a decade ago. So it's very powerful what can happen when you change your own perception of yourself and your reality from the past. And most importantly, release the emotional charge that was in that. So essentially, the concept is we unwire the unresourceful connections or limiting patterns of thinking from the past, release the emotional charge in that synaptic wiring in your subconscious, and then reconnect it in a completely different way that's unrelatable to the way it was before. And when that happens, you have a new way of looking at the world, your own way of looking at things. On their own, they'll say, you know what? Yes, I did attract that horrible relationship, that horrible husband, but guess what? I became a stronger woman because of it. I'll make better decisions because of it. I feel more confident now of who I really want, what I'm really looking for. And of course, I cleared the baggage. So then law of attraction seems to work like I was describing as well. All of that works together.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I love it. That's just what an incredible tool to have in your toolbox for healing. And thank you so much for sharing all this. Again, I love learning new things that can help in the healing journey and sharing it with my viewers and my listeners. You have been kind enough to offer a free PDF for people on your website, and I'll have all the links where people can reach you, where they can learn more about your programs, and also to this free PDF and its self techniques that you can do to help yourself prior to, or you can do right now, which is great from wherever you are. So I love
Absolutely.
that. And I don't know if there's anything in closing you want to add here about voice biofeedback and helping people heal from divorce.
Yes, I would say no matter how challenging your life has been with divorce, or how horrible the divorce is and how challenging it is, just know that you can have the life that you ideally wanted and the relationship you ideally wanted by first releasing all those emotional patterns that you currently are going through right now, and then being liberated and free and feeling happy for no reason. You'll actually feel like that kind of happiness when you're able to release those patterns of the past and then be able to draw what you really want into the future. And I definitely have figured out some ways of speeding up that process in a very eloquent, smooth way. And I also wanted to add, if I may, Rachel, that I offer a complimentary 15-minute consult with me, no obligations, where these women can share with me all the challenges going on in their life, because I customize my program for each woman, unique needs, to get them the result they want for what they're desiring.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a guest and talking to all of us about this. I really am so happy to have learned about this, and I will definitely pass your name along to clients if they want to give you a call and check you out. And so thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are listening or watching this podcast, if you like what you hear, please do me the favor of subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. You never know when there may be somebody who could benefit from one of these tools or healing modalities that we talk about. And it is really great for me to know that you support me. And so thank you for being here today. And thank you, Deepak. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thank you, Rachel.